Okay, so now we're going to get into more of a defensive coding techniques in this video. So we're going to go back to the PowerPoint, and we're also going to go back to our future value application. So that being said, exceptions are usually reserved for things that are outside of our control. So again, like a server being up or down, a SQL database being up or down, a network being up or down, an internet connection being available. But these text boxes are within our control. So exceptions might not be the best use, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So what we're going to do is try to sanitize the input that's coming in from the user, and these Chapter 7 slides actually give us some good methods that we can use to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this isPresent method, go back to my Visual Studio, and paste it here. So now here's a method out of the PowerPoint that you can pass it as a parameter, the text box that you want to check, and see if it has a text value. If it does, or if it does not, if it has an empty string, it's going to throw up a message box and return false. So it returns Boolean. Otherwise, if it does have a value here, it'll return true. So if you want to make sure that they have input for a text box, we can ensure that here. So there's also a couple methods we can extract out of this PowerPoint as well. There's the isPresent, isDecimal, I'm going to go ahead and steal isDecimal. Go back here and paste it. And I also want to steal the is within range. I don't know why PowerPoint is having a seizure here. Here is within range. I'll paste that below here. They also have an isValidData method, which works for this application in particular. I don't know, you might have to redo this isValidData method in other applications. So validate txt yearly interest rate, I think is what I called it. And I think I have another text box as well. Monthly investment interest rate and the number of months, I think. Or number of years, yeah. I want to go ahead and pass in that text box to this method. And I want to explain this a little further, so I'm not going to leave you guys in the dark. This passes the name of the text box, number of years, let's put like 70. This passes the name of the text box to the message box if an error does occur. Okay, so now we can call this isValidData method when we go up here on the button click event. So we can say if isValidData and it's a method, so we have to make sure that we call it without parameters. So we only want to do this. We only want to go through all these calculations if we have valid data. I don't know if it actually formatted. Doesn't. Oh, it looks like it did. Okay. So we have our valid data method. So what does that do? So let's go down in F12 into this isValidData method. So the first thing that it does is it checks to make sure that we have a monthly investment text box that is present, or they have a value in, that value is a decimal, and that value is within the range of 1 to 1,000. So let's see what this isPresent method does. We're going to send it the text box and the name of the text box, or just pretty much the label that we want displayed if an exception occurs. So this is a method that we said the text box, if the text box that they sent to us has an empty string, that's when we want to throw up a message, because this is going to be, it's going to fail the convert static class method call. So let's look at the isDecimal. So here it calls the try-parse method, and remember it uses this out keyword so that this number is used as a reference type, and it returns true if it can get through this try-parse. Otherwise it returns a message box and returns false. And isWithinRange, it kind of does something similar. You have the text box, you have the name and the min and the max. So we have the number that we're trying to parse. So we already know that it's a decimal, so we know that this convert shouldn't fail, because that we validated it was a decimal before we sent it to isWithinRange. And then they make sure that the number is less than the min and not greater than the max. That it's not less than the min or not greater than the max. If it is, it's going to throw this message box. If it's not, it's going to return true. So if all of those return true, this isValidData should pass, and it should start going through our program logic. So let's make sure that I wrote that correctly. So now we have our monthly investment text box, and let's click Calculate. Monthly investment is a required field. So let's put garbage in it. Calculate. Monthly investment must be a decimal value. So it's catching, and the program isn't crashing. It's not really throwing an exception. We didn't have to code have any exception handling in here. We're just coding defensive. We just implemented defensive coding techniques, and we're sanitizing our data. So now it should tell me, let's make the monthly investment out of range. There we go. And that called our third defensive coding method. So let's make it in range. I think my yearly interest rate is going to fail because I didn't write it correctly the first time. So let me go back. Our monthly interest rate should be this, and then again divided by 100. So it should force them to put in a whole number interest rate. So if we want 999 with an 8% interest rate for 5 years, and there, it went through all of our logic once it ensured that all of our text fields were in the proper format. Now if I went ahead and the interest rate was out of range, it catches that. So it's no harm to copy and paste those methods in your program as long as you understand what they're doing. Remember, calling isValidData actually takes those text boxes and passes them to those methods. And those three methods shown here test that the text box has a present value, is a decimal, and is within range.